And so, and that was quite a slide there. If you need to take a break, I understand. And so if we go into the traditional, if we go the traditional esoteric route, respecting the lineage of teaching that David Lynch has been initiated into, the phrase "between two worlds, fire walk with me," or just "fire walk with me," is a mantra which is meaningless. The idea of two worlds or of separation is meaningless, since such a notion is referred to as Maya or illusion, and the phrase "fire walk with me," while very compelling and dramatic, doesn't mean anything at all either. Now, having said that, I will offer some other alternative interpretations on what it does mean, of course. Now, after all, Lynch's work is on a high level in terms of being transcendent, okay? And so when parsed in such a way, any references made to the spiritual will tend to transcend meaning itself anyway. Why? Because otherwise we are dealing with a realm which is completely human and physical in its origins, which it isn't, in the ultimate sense at least. Now, this isn't to say that the human stories, the human meaning, the human significance in Twin Peaks isn't there and doesn't exist, because that isn't true at all. There are some very compelling and rich with meaning story elements in Twin Peaks. We all know that, but only in human psychological terms. However, during the transcendent scenes in Twin Peaks, like the dream sequence in the Red Room, meaning can be highly subjective or even non-existent, which is another way of saying infinite. Hence, the nearly endless analysis videos in existence on Twin Peaks, including this one. Now, that doesn't mean we can't or shouldn't lend our own interpretations to such a high level of artistic expression. The human game is quite an enjoyable one, and of course part of that is playing the game of interpretation, since it is a lot of fun. However, the act of being in and of itself, the act of something existing, doesn't require meaning in order to exist. So what we are often being shown in Twin Peaks are glimpses of the transcendent nature of reality through the perspective of human interpretation, which is a lot of times it's like looking at the night sky through a straw, which is pretty much what astronomers do anyway. This isn't to say that things lose all meaning here in the waiting room. It's only that the source of ultimate reality remains just out of view behind the red curtain, just as the search for definitive meaning in Twin Peaks only leads to more questions and more theories. What lies behind it all, however, is not Bob or Mike or the Black Lodge or the White Lodge, but instead an eternal state of pure conscious awareness as the source of all things. Now, of course, we need some sort of human reference point in order to understand Twin Peaks at any, reasonable level. Just don't expect that one certain view or way of interpreting this scene in the Red Room is going to be correct above all others. This is the trap that many fall into, which is to say, believing that the finger which points at the moon is indeed the moon, which it is not, of course. Now, moving further into Dale's dream, what sticks out most in this scene is the unconscious arrangement of the characters, objects, and furniture. First, Agent Cooper has the planet Saturn representing the Greek god Kronos, placed at his right shoulder and at the far left of this frame here. This infers the linear nature of time and its influence over this mortal realm, of which Cooper is still part of, as he is aligned correctly with the floor pattern, as well as the mysterious shadow passing along the curtain, and we'll go more into the shadow a little bit later. Now, the arm sits between Dale and Laura, and he is a mediator. He's representing an intermediary or messenger between the two worlds, just as Mike alludes to. And to me, it seems like there are multiple levels of operation happening at the same time. Now, the arm and Laura are no longer part of the same time-bound realm of the physical that Dale Cooper is. So they're in this transcendent place. They're in this plenum, this middle ground of the Red Room. And so that's why they're seated perpendicular to Dale and are perpendicular to the pattern on the floor. This floor pattern is an unconscious signal indicating the linear flow of time and its relationship to physical space or physical reality. It's too bad that they couldn't get the black and white floor installed for this first Red Room scene, by the way. Now, if you ever wondered what sort of sound is made by one hand clapping, or in this case, what sound is made by one arm rubbing its hands together, then wonder no more, my friends. The sound seems to resemble, now you hear, it's funny because the arm is rubbing his hands together, which is funny just in and of itself because of what he represents. But as he's rubbing his hands together, there's this sound that's emanating, and it resembles a Tibetan singing bowl, or I think of it more of as like a crystal singing bowl, if you've ever played one of those. And it summons this mysterious shadow. The shadow appears after the arm rubs his hands together, and that you hear this like singing bowl sort of sound. Okay, but I do laugh at the idea of the arm rubbing both hands together. It's brilliant. Now, granted, it can often be very hard to discern just one continuous thread of meaning from this sort of imagery, but perhaps that is the point after all. Now, one of my favorite pre-existing theories, not my theory, is one about the arm being Saturn, which relates to the harmonics of the planets interacting. However, one question I have about this is, what about Agent Cooper and Laura? Do they get to be planets too? I'm not sure where they fit in this. So I don't see the arm in my interpretation. I don't see the arm as Saturn, although I think it's a great idea. However compelling that theory may be, I will explain who the arm represents to me, at least in the Greek esoteric sense. But first, let's talk a little bit about Laura. Now, similar to Dale, Laura also has a deity at her right shoulder. The female statue is of the Greek goddess Venus, the Roman iteration of the Greek goddess Aphrodite. The relationship between the archetypal figure of Venus and Laura Palmer are plainly obvious, having been discussed many times before. However, something which hasn't gotten very much attention is the fact that the goddess Aphrodite has two aspects or forms which is eerily similar to the double life of Laura Palmer. The metaphysical or spiritual form depicted at the top center is Aphrodite Urania, born without a mother from the sea foam and daughter of Uranus as the purse soul, or the aspect of the divine feminine energy. So she's the pure soul aspect of this divine feminine energy. The physical aspect of the goddess in the lower center is known as Aphrodite Pandemos, which means common to all people. This scene demonstrates perfectly the relationship between the archetype of Aphrodite and that of Laura Palmer, both inhabiting a seemingly dual nature which hints at the unconscious nature of disharmony and inner conflict.